Quanell, when I was at Harvard, I had a professor that I really enjoyed. I took his tactics and ethics in criminal defense or criminal trial class, and I found him to be a brilliant man. He was a darling of the left for many years, but in the last decade, he has been highly critical of many aspects of the Democratic Party, and it has forced him to fall out of favor with the mainstream media. And in fact, the media paints a very different portrait of the man. I know you've had some interactions with him, but Alan Dershowitz, when I was in his class, he seemed to be beholden to the truth above politics, beholden to the truth above everything. And the only thing in front of the truth for him was his clients. And he took his oath very seriously that as a criminal defense attorney, you always have to put their client's interests first. But he was a remarkable professor. It was a remarkable opportunity for me as a young student to be in his classroom. But he has made an incredible point this week, earlier in the week on Fox News, when he was speaking about the special prosecutor appointed by our Attorney General to look into the Hunter Biden criminality. Now, we all witnessed the sweetheart plea deal where he was getting a little wrist slap all fall apart because the defense attorneys expected the judge to allow them to shield Hunter from any future prosecution. And some media attention caused that to fall apart. Well, now, in trying to paint this false portrait of impartiality, the Attorney General has appointed a special prosecutor. The problem with that special prosecutor is it's the U.S. Attorney, David Weiss, who works for Merrick Garland. And Dershowitz has made the point that I think is incredibly important. Hey, how are you a special prosecutor? How are you independent if you're merely appointing someone that works for the AG and ultimately works for Biden? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the scumbag that is Hunter Biden, who I think is an apple that didn't fall far from the tree.
You and I both can agree that Hunter Biden is a criminal. We both can agree that he pandered foreign powers and rich people of other nations.
You don't think Joe Biden's a criminal?
Some of these nations, I'm gonna get there, and some of these nations that are enemies to America, he sold access to those nations and its criminals to the Biden administration and to his father. We know that. We know that there's some issues with what was on that laptop about maybe he had been having sexual relations with his own sister-in-law. And we know he lied about it, even being his in the beginning. Then he wanted to sue the very man that released it and gave access to it. Look, we know Hunter Biden is a dirtbag. Let's just be straight up. But his father ain't that clean either, because he knew what his son was doing. And in fact, to prove that they're both feathers of the same flock, when he was indicted and pled guilty, his words from his father was, President Biden, I'm proud of my son. What a damn fool the president really looks like saying things like that, when that's what you raised, with all the things surrounding him that you know from your own access to the Justice Department that he's guilty of. But now, Alan Dershowitz, well, Dershowitz, you call him, the secret racist. Since you said he likes the truth and he pursues the truth, well, why don't Mr. Dershowitz tell us the truth of what he was doing with Mr. Epstein on Mr. Epstein's island? Why don't he come forward and tell us how he was getting massages in his underwear from teenage girls on Mr. Epstein's island, since he's so much of a passionate pursuer of truth and justice? Why don't you give justice to those young girls and their families on that dirty freak island you was hanging out on with Epstein and other political powers? But Hunter Biden, it's true, he's getting a slap on the wrist, a pat on the wrist, and now with the special counsel, he's getting a kiss on the wrist. It's corruption, and I've been warning the American people for years now. This country has been hijacked, and the American people must take it back. Not for white people, not for black people, not for Hispanic people, but for all of us. Because none of us have a free government in America that's controlled by the masses of the people anymore.
Okay, I want to address a couple of topics. First of all, Hunter Biden has not pled yet. In fact, his plea agreement.
Well, the plea was overturned. You're right.
It is still being negotiated. The thing, not only is the laptop exposed that he was having a sexual relationship with the widow of his deceased brother Bo, but he was also apparently having a sexual relationship with possibly her sister.
Oh, sweet
and
Jesus.
that he had advised the widow that she needed to get an HIV test after they had sex. There's pictures of him smoking crack while driving at an incredible rate of speed. But you know, when you talk about the president talking about how he's proud of Hunter, if you'll look into the early 90s, there's tons of video where the president is demanding not drug dealers, but drug users get significant prison sentences, right? And now he's proud of his son. Where it's now framed as a disease. Now, I have been a drug war abolitionist for decades. I didn't believe in the drug war when I was a policeman. When I was at Harvard, taking classes from Professor Dershowitz, I wrote a thesis saying why the drug war was designed to oppress men of color. I think it's always been a bad idea, but Biden will say he evolved on the issue, but if you'll go back to the 70s, Biden didn't want schools desegregated, right? Biden has a lifetime of good for thee, not for me, right? That he has led a lifetime. He got caught cheating in law school. He got plagiarizing in his first bid for the presidency.
Well, that's the same thing George Bush Jr. did.
Biden is an absolute scumbag. Okay, but the problem is, so is Donald Trump, and we are faced with, these are the leaders of the two parties that have abandoned America, but we've never seen anything as blatant. Biden said, "I've never talked to any of my son's business associates." The laptop establishes a lie. We know now that Secretary of State Blinken reached out to the intelligence community and bullied them during the election to all release a statement, oh, this laptop's fake, it's Russian disinformation, when every damn person knew that it was real. And we also know that Joe Biden doesn't get elected if the media in Silicon Valley didn't coalesce together to prevent this story, the truth of this. Because Joe Biden, while he was vice president, worked hand in hand with his son to generate millions of dollars, not just for his son, but other members of his family.
Corruption in the White House did not start with Joe Biden.
Right, but it's never been worse.
There's been generational corruption in the White House.
See, I would disagree. I don't think it's ever been worse than it is now.
Are you going to tell me the Kennedys didn't have some corruption in the White House? He's sneaking Marilyn Monroe all through secret tunnels.
There's a big difference between sex selling
and his
privilege.
father, John, was allowed to build relationships with the mafia on behalf of his son to funnel secret money from the mafia to his son's campaign, to also give them greater access to Cuba. Look, corruption has been going on in the White House. George Bush Jr.
So we should be okay with it?
No.
Should we be okay with it?
George Bush Jr. started a whole war on the basis of a lie for the purpose of all money. And look at his vice president at the time, Cheney, who got rich from those contracts from the very countries that we invaded. It's been going on. The American people are to blame. Why? Because we collectively should have held politicians accountable and let them and remind them daily they are servants of the people, but they look at the people as servants of them. That is the failure of the American people as a whole, to hold our politicians accountable, all the way from city council all up to the United States Congress and U.S. Senate and the White House. That's on us.
I would disagree, right? I think that the powers that be, the entrenched politicians like Joe Biden, I would think there's a reason. I never supported Trump, I've never liked Trump, but Trump threatened their ecosystem, this complete control. And what Obama effectively did was created a paradigm with the press corps that if you don't go along, that if you object to the narrative, we're going to deny you access. And that became the new normal, right? And Joe Biden has just increased that to an absurd degree. But this corruption, the blatancy, because you didn't see corruption during the Obama administration. You didn't see overt corruption during the Bush administration.
No, you're wrong.
Hold on.
No, you're wrong. Yes,
you did not see the kind of corruption that you saw.
There was no corruption with Benghazi?
You did not see.
There was no corruption to protect and cover Hillary Clinton during Benghazi?
Don't get me wrong. I think the Secretary of State, the Secretary Clinton made horrible decisions that led to the deaths of men and then lied about it, right? But when I'm talking about corruption, I'm talking about seeking monetary gain, right? It was really Bill Clinton as a post-president and Al Gore as a post-vice president that began the era of monetizing being a former president. Al Gore has done more, right? I think climate change is real. I think that we are destroying the environment, but I think it is exacerbated by dishonest statements by scientists in the government who want to use it as a vehicle to strip us of individual liberties. And Al Gore has made hundreds of millions of dollars off it. The Clinton Foundation,
I disagree.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Is absolutely real,
hold
brother.
on. I'm saying it's real.
Don't you feel his heat?
Do you think you should?
feel his heat
do you
in
think you
Texas?
should pay more taxes and have less freedom because of it?
I believe
Do you
that
think
I
you
am
should pay
willing.
more
I
taxes?
am willing to pay more taxes.
And where does that money go?
If it means that we can transition to greater access to solar power.
Where does that money go?
But the American people have to hold politicians accountable when we give them that money. We got to do that,
But
Charles.
when the media is working with
gotta
the
go to more solar
Democrats
energy.
and working with Silicon Valley
Charles,
to create one story
if we don't go
that
to
we all
alternative
have to
energy,
listen to.
If we don't move forward to alternative energy, Charles, we're going to burn
I
up.
agree.
We're going to burn
but
up.
I don't think we need
you're from
we
Austin,
need to
right?
pay carbon taxes. I don't think we
Are
need
you
to
from
control
Austin?
our movement. I don't think we need to give up our liberty
Charles,
because of the environment.
global warming
It's
is
all a
real.
lie.
You grew up in Austin.
I agree that it's real.
You grew up in Austin,
but
right?
it's not a war.
Did you grow up in Austin?
Yes.
When the last time you seen Lake Travis?
There have been.
Have you seen that?
There have been periods of
Have you
droughts
seen
and
that?
excess rain throughout history.
More and more. We've never seen Lake Travis like it is now in the last 15 years.
Okay.
It's a shock, man. America and the whole earth is under attack because of man's attack on the atmosphere and on the planet.
$50 trillion in the next 30 years on fighting climate change, or we should spend that money on universal health care to make sure all American citizens have health care. A universal
We can do
benefit.
both.
No, we can't do both.
All right, so stop right there. How much money we spent on invading Iraq?
Horrible idea. I was against the war the whole time.
How much money we spent killing Gaddafi?
Hey, I think
How
America,
much money we spent in Afghanistan to give it back to the Taliban? How much money have we given Ukraine that ain't got a damn thing to do with the safety and security of the American people?
Hey, I agree.
Just those 4 wars alone can finance health care and education for all American citizens in this country, can get the best health care on the planet with just what they took in those wars alone, just 10% of it.
Maybe America,
Just 10% of it.
Maybe America should start doing things for Americans. But the thing is, that doesn't buy you influence, power, and privilege. The reason
Because
why,
the wealth have hijacked the country.
The reason why the Congress and the Senate and the executive office all want to dole out money around the world, it's all about buying power and access and wealth. And it has nothing to do with the American people.
If that is true,
Republicans
and
the
I agree
Democrats
with
have
you.
absolutely abandoned us. But I will tell you,
So the country don't belong to us.
Hunter Biden needs to be, let's go back to the original topic. So you made a comment about Dershowitz and Epstein's Island.
Alan Dirty Rich.
So Dershowitz is the only person. You have all these people that were on the flight logs, all these whispers. Dershowitz is the only one to prosecute a claim for defamation and have them come out and say, hey, you're right, never mind. Because Dershowitz is not a pervert. He's not a pedophile.
He wasn't on the island?
There's a huge difference
He wasn't on the
between
island?
being on the island
All
and
the-
engaging in
all the
perversion.
freaks in high-powered positions and tons of young girls, teenagers,
It's
was
horrible.
on that island
It's horrible.
with a bunch of
And we
freak,
have a
sick
bunch
individuals.
of oligarchs and very powerful
and he's getting
people
massages
who
in his
ain't never
drawers.
said a damn word, right? However, Dershowitz is the one, the only one,
Because
who said,
the
you know what,
one-
I didn't
because
do it,
that
I'm going
one
to sue
case-
you.
Because that one case he knew would never go to trial. Like all of the powerful people who went on the island knew, including Mr. Clinton and others.
What do you think about
They
the
knew,
thought
they
that
knew
Epstein
would die in jail.
But what do you?
They
what-
knew Epstein would be murdered in prison.
What about the rumor that Epstein was actually a CIA asset and was using these girls to establish the ability to blackmail the most powerful and the wealthiest people in the world?
I can believe that.
That's the kind of
Because
stuff that we
that
don't talk
sounds
about
like the
enough.
behavior of the CIA.
Oh, most definitely. But if we go back to Biden, do you think Hunter Biden ever spends a day in jail? You think Joe Biden ever has accountability for a lifetime of corruption?
As long as his father is president, he never will.
Well, even after his father's president.
Well, perhaps.
Do you think that's
But
an
statute of
election
limitations.
issue? Well, there's not a statute.
If his father wins re-election, statute of limitations do come into play.
Right.
If his father wins re-election.
So do you?
But if his father's still president, he'll pardon his
Well,
son.
he can pardon him on his way out the door. He doesn't have to wait until he's
Well,
charged.
wait. He can
issue a blanket pardon.
Once he gets re-election, he can pardon him the next day.
Yeah, he can. I mean, I honestly, he can. After he loses the next election, he can pardon.
He can still pardon him,
Yeah,
and I believe that he would.
Right. What do you think about a father pardoning a son who's committed horrifying crimes against America? Would you, if one of your kids did what Hunter Biden did, which I know they wouldn't because they're wonderful children.
I'll be honest with you,
would
man.
you pardon them?
I'll be very honest with you. There was a time in America where our parents would say to us, if you get in trouble, don't call me.
Right.
Because I'm not coming down there. There was a time to where if we did something wrong and it was brought to our parents' attention, we got another whooping when we got home, but we got one by the adult first when they caught us. We're living in a country right now, Charles, and I see it every day now. Parents who will even ask me, would I be willing to help cover up the wrongdoings of their sons, even when I explain to them, your son is guilty, and your son really has done this. They don't want that boy to be punished at all. They'd rather cover it up. So when you say, what do I think about a president doing it? Unfortunately, it's becoming a pattern of behavior for parents
it's the new normal.
To try to cover up the wrongdoings of their children. And it's sad. I wouldn't be shocked at all because I see it happening every week in this country, almost every day now.
Yeah, I will tell you, when I was on the bench, when I would sit on a juvenile docket, you have really three types of parents. You have the parent that's aggravated that are having to come to a criminal court with their child because they had to take time out of the day to do it. That child is probably lost, right? You have the parents that are there to fight for their child because they don't believe they're guilty. Some of those parents are enabling their children's bad acts, but also some of them realize that their child is being treated unfairly and they're fighting for those child. I think that child has a better chance. And then you have the parent that has researched the issue, come to the conclusion that the child did wrong, and want to make sure they don't get overpunished, but also make sure that there's a consequence. And that, of course, is the best type of parenting. But that is not America now. Hunter Biden, but really what concerns me most about Hunter Biden is how the media has acted in unison with social media and with the Biden administration to tell all of America, oh, there's nothing to see here. Oh, these millions of dollars being paid not just to Hunter but to other family members. Oh, there's nothing to see here. And every lie is compounded on another lie, and there's always a new story. Oh, well, I never talked to any of his business associates. Oh, well, I talked to them, but I didn't talk to them about anything of consequence. And see, the thing is, what we forget and what we've heard a lot about, so it becomes white noise, is, well, during the Trump administration, you saw the same thing. You saw Trump funneling millions of tax dollars through his business. You saw Trump saying he gave his salary back, which he never did. You see, at the end of his term, tenure as president, you saw his son-in-law and his daughter have this billion-dollar deal with the government of Saudi Arabia. We see all these horrible things, and we as regular Americans, right, we look back and we say, why? Why are we putting up with this crap? Because we're now no, we're not, because we're excluded from the political process.
Who are the ones who have the power?
Corporatists.
Who are the real ones?
The oligarchs and the corporations.
With the power to clean this up.
The oligarchs and the corporations.
The American people.
No, we are being brainwashed.
When the American people can see the corruption, not only in the White House, but what appears to be serious corruption in the United States Supreme Court itself. When the highest court in the land in America, that used to be considered an impeccable court of character and morality and truth, when you see the corruption there now, our country has been hijacked, Charles. And only the American people, through a collective outcry, can make a difference and change what we see that has taken this country to hell with its eyes wide open.
I think it's going to take a huge portion of Americans walking away from the Democrat Party, walking away from the Republican Party, walking away from the red-blue two-party paradigm, and saying we are absolutely disgusted. We need something, and it needs to be the something in the center. We don't need, and I am a libertarian on many issues, but we don't need a radical libertarian response. We need a centrist response. We need Americans who don't judge other Americans by their immutable characteristics, by their religion, their race, their ethnicity, their orientation. We need those type of Americans that just want fair taxes and public safety and a nice life for them and their family.
So
to
what
say,
we
to
need,
hell with both of y'all, we're gone.
So what we need is a common sense party.
Ain't gonna happen.
That refuses to accept corporate dollars.
They ain't gonna happen.
A common sense party with candidates that refuse to accept corporate dollars. And if we can just picture this, if we can just get 2 elected in Congress, just 2, and just 1 elected in the Senate, we could flip the whole thing. Because they can hold it all up.
But the problem
They can hold it all
the
up.
problem is corporate dollars have bought both parties. And America
So our
is on
government's
that
been hijacked.
downhill slide.
So our government's been hijacked,
Our
ladies and gentlemen.
government passes rules keeping corporations
And the
out of
Supreme
politics,
Court
and the
cannot
Supreme
do it
Court
because
doesn't
they're
invalidate it.
financially corrupt
Well, it's
by those
amazing.
same powers.
You know, the Supreme Court can flip all kind of precedent, but yet they can't go in there and address this issue where they said, oh, corporations are human beings and they have a right to free speech.
Did you see them vacations they was taking?
Yeah, it's absurd.
And who was paying for them?
Yeah,
That's why
it's
they couldn't do
disgusting.
it. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you watching Face Off. Please tell others, and please spread this show. We greatly appreciate your help.